Remind.
Oh, that's loud.
So welcome everyone, and thank you so much for tuning into this Product Buds Product Case Studies workshop. We are super excited to have you all here. And if you are interviewing for PM roles or are simply looking to learn how product managers solve problems, then you've come to the right place. So today we'll be practicing solving product design questions, which you will be expected to do for PM. So here at Product we create a safe environment for every one of us to learn and to simply support each other. So if you are joining us for the first time, or if you've been a product bud for quite a while now, enjoy the session today, engage in the chat, and uh, show our guest speaker Summer today how great of a community we are. So before we start, a few housekeeping notes. First, we'd love to see your lovely faces that make up our community. So feel free to turn on your video, but please mute your mics so that we limit any distraction for today. And instead, like what I said, we'd love to feel your energy through the chat. So we expect really great engagement today. So hopefully everyone's energy levels are high. And we will also leave 10 to 15 minutes towards the end for any questions. So my team will drop the Slido link. Please reserve all your questions there, and we'll have Summer answer the top voted questions towards the end. We are also recording this event, so you can tune into it right after on our YouTube channel. So subscribe if you haven't yet. And lastly, when you find this session valuable, we encourage you to take notes and share your insights to your network on LinkedIn as well. Tag us, the Product Buds team, and tag Summer. And this is a really great way for you to show your network that you are being proactive in learning about product management and advancing your expertise. So without further ado, let's give a clap emoji to our speaker, Summer.
Okay, are we ready to go? Cool. Okay, thank you for the intro and thanks for having me today. So today we'll be talking about product design questions, which will be very relevant for all of you that are doing interviews or you're even thinking about interviewing. This will be an interactive session, so it'll be a great way to walk through the questions that you should ask yourself while you're interviewing and also see what other people do when they're interviewing. So a little bit more background on me. I'm a product manager on Google Cloud. Prior to this, I was at Microsoft. And before that, I was in all of your spots, interviewing for PM roles right out of college. So if any of you have interviews coming up for Microsoft or Google, feel free to message me on LinkedIn afterwards, and I'm happy to share tips. And so basically what I've been doing since I've been out of college is I've really been focused on giving back to the community. I love supporting people like you. I've done resume screens, and I've interviewed for hundreds of candidates out of college for both SWE and PM roles. And so I'm really excited to come and bring this all to you today. Okay, so to kick off things, we'll start off with a general overview of what you really need to be a product manager. So the skills that let you stand out as a PM candidate. Then we'll go over some of the PM interview questions and different tips I have from my experience interviewing. And then we'll get into the meat of it, which is practicing the product cases. So this will be super interactive. I want to see you all in the chat. I want to see your ideas. And I think it'll be a ton of fun. And then we'll go on and then we'll wrap up and do any Q&A. So I'll stop here. Does anyone have any questions before I start? Feel free to use the chat. Cool, no questions for the agenda. Okay, let's keep going. So let's get this out of the way. What are the essentials of product management? So can people type in the chat what they think a PM does? Collaboration, yeah, that's a great one. Anyone else? Empathize, yes. Stakeholder management is a definite yes. Business and tech, creativity, brainstorming, user advocate. These are all really, really great. Okay, so let's ask the next question. So we have all of these things that are important for PMs. Now, how do we get to the meat of it? Why do we actually need product managers? Thoughts? To get shit done. Yes, +1. Okay. To be the glue. Get bread. Meet deadlines. Yes, perfect. Okay, so let me try to tie all these together and then share what my thoughts are on what a PM is and why we need them. So here's my take on it. A PM's responsibility can be boiled down to one word, which is success. You are responsible for the success of your product. And this can mean many things. It can mean all the things that you guys listed in the chat. And it can mean like not all of those things, right? It's a highly flexible role and it involves working across like all these different teams and wearing different hats. But when it comes down to it, you are the one who is responsible for the success. Like when leadership is coming and asking for an update or what's happening with the product, you're the one standing in front of them, you're advocating for your team and for your product. And so it's very flexible, you learn a lot of things, and this is why it makes it so rewarding to be a PM. So moving on, we'll go into some of the skills that are needed to be a good PM. So I'm sure you guys have seen huge lists of what PMs need. I probably read like many of the same lists when I was prepping, but here are kind of the common ones that I've seen that are important while working. Collaboration, communication, strategic thinking, drive for results, and customer obsession. And so all of these are skills that you're already building. You're building them in your classes, in your projects, all of these. And these are the skills that you really want to show interviewers when you're interviewing. And so the great thing about all of these is the way to demonstrate these and the way to build these, it all comes with practice. And then once you practice this a lot and practice how to present, then you'll be able to show that to the interviewer and you'll be in great shape for your interviews. And then I have one tip for when you're going into these different interviews. For every project and experience that you list on your resume or that you plan to talk to about on your interviews, literally write down what skills these map to, right? And that will really help you to hone your message, right? And if there's any skills that you're highlighting with your projects or your experiences that are outside this list, think about like what story you're trying to tell and how this makes you unique. And then you can convey this message to the interviewers. Okay, so moving on, we are going to start talking about PM interviews. And this section will give you like a series of tips that I personally found to be useful during my interviews. Feel free if you have any tips of your own to post them in the chat, the more the merrier. Okay, so starting off, what will you be asked in a PM interview? So I know there's like a lot of breakdowns of the different types of questions. People talk about like estimation questions, they talk about behavioral, like all these different types. In my mind, all of these can be bundled into 3 categories: behavioral, product, and technical. And all of these questions can actually be practiced, which is awesome. And the best way to practice these questions is to actually know what questions will be asked. So the next couple slides, I'll go over each product and each question area. But the most important thing that you can do during a PM interview is know what format to expect. And sometimes this differs between interviewers and recruiters. Recruiters will tell you one thing, and then an interviewer will choose to do like their own spin on a question, right? So make sure to ask both your recruiter and the interviewer at the beginning of the interview, and then also practice for different time intervals. Yeah, I see in the chat, least favorite type of question, estimation, same. So yeah, just want to emphasize this, practice your answers for different time intervals because it's very different to answer a product design question in 15 minutes versus 30 minutes. So you want to make sure to give yourself enough time to give a great answer. Okay, cool. Moving on, here are my tips for behavioral questions. Do yourself a favor and compile lists of the most common behavioral questions. Most of you already probably have a list. And then take the time to write down what your responses would be for each question. Give yourself like 2 to 3 options, use a structured framework like STAR, and then try testing them out with your friends. Like test one with one friend and ask them what they got out of that question and your answer. And then take it one step further and ask yourself, what PM trait does each response map to? And at the end of the day, you'll really be able to cut down and prioritize which are your best responses. And then you'll be able to clearly communicate that to your interviewer. And then this is another tip is what's important for these interviews is being able to convey who you are to the interviewer, right? And so that can be done through things like telling about your different projects, experiences, but really what you can do to take it a step further is tying all those experiences together. So look at your interview as a whole and think about what your story is. Okay, so technical questions. Here are a few practical points on how to prep, but the best way to get better at these is practice. Put yourself out there, do mock interviews, and learn how to communicate your answers very clearly. And then my other tip on this one is, so when you're going through these interviews, remember that you're interviewing for a PM role. You're not interviewing for a SWE role. You're not interviewing for another role. What they care about is how you are as a PM, right? And to the point, when you're going through these technical questions, ask these different clarifying questions. And when you're getting answers or you're starting to frame and scope your solutions, bring it back to the user value, because that's how you are like valuable as a PM, right? Is understanding what is the clear goal you want when you're going through these questions. And then I think if you do that, the interviewers will be very impressed. And then next. Cool. And then moving on, let's see. So for product questions, I think these are usually the bulk of it and what people usually think about when they think of PM interviews. So here's some tips. Make sure to interview, to ask your interviewer questions. They're often your greatest advocate and they want to see you succeed. I always start my interviews by providing my background and then asking my interviewer for theirs. And then this also helps at the end of your interviewer when you're thinking of like different follow-up questions, right? Because then you can ask things about their product, about their experience, what brought them there. And then the key to a lot of these questions is asking yourself why at different points in it. Keep giving yourself that opportunity to do a gut check and then talk through your thought process, because oftentimes interviewers want to see like how you work through solutions. And then the last 2 points are think big and make sure to prioritize and summarize. In general, these are just good tips for PMs, whether you're interviewing or you're working in industry. And then the next tip is make sure to connect with your interviewer. They're people too. I've been on both sides of it. I've been like super scared and nervous in front of my interviewer. And I've been on the side where like my interviewees are really nervous. I think the key is bringing it back to the fact that they're people, they've been in your spot before. You guys are all super bright, super capable, and like really have it in you to be PMs. And no interviewer comes in wanting to see you not do well. So make sure you remember that and keep that in mind. Talk to your interviewer, engage with them, collaborate with them, and we all want to see you succeed. Okay, so that was my overview of being a PM. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Otherwise, we will move on to the product case. Cool. No questions. Okay, can we get links to the systems design? Yes, I will send out this deck or provide it somewhere, and then also the links. Okay, any tips on standing out from the crowd? Yeah, so PM interviews are interesting in that there are no perfect answers to all the questions, right? A behavioral question doesn't have a perfect answer. Product questions don't have one. So being able to convey your story, your message, and what unique value you bring, and having a consistent message will help you stand out. What are the best PM prep books? I have a slide near the end that actually shares them. I use the same ones you guys use, Cracking the PM Interview, Decode and Conquer, all of that. How long is the average PM interview? In my experience, I have seen them from anywhere from like 30-minute calls for first rounds to 45 to 60-minute interviews for the final rounds or for second rounds. Cool. Are there any good tips for figuring out your story? Yes. So there are definitely resources out there where you can do guided maps of your story. I also think doing the STAR exercise, where for every behavioral question, you list out what would be your response, will also help you find those common themes. Okay, so Diane has a question. How is a PM different from product operations? Good question. I have not been in product operations before, but for a PM side of things, you work on the strategic roadmap, you work with all the stakeholders and talk to the customers. And so I think in that it differs from product operations, who are working more on the operation side of it, where the PM is working with like Eng and UX. How does the interview process change for intern roles? From Zoe. Good question. So the questions are likely the same. I've been practicing with the same questions for like 5 years. I think what does change is the expectations and the rubric. So for intern roles, oftentimes we look at things like potential, and we look at like how you're willing to grow and learn. And so I think that is more emphasized for intern roles. And okay, I will take this one last question and then we'll move on. How long should the answer be for the tell me about yourself? In general, I would say it should be about 1 to 2 minutes. If you're talking for like 5 to 7 minutes, that might be too long of an answer. But if you are like talking back and forth with your interviewer, it might take longer, right? So honestly, it all depends on the rapport you have with the interviewer and checking in on that. Okay, so let's move on to the product case. Okay, so let's post in the chat. What are some of the frameworks used by PMs? What are some of the frameworks you guys have been using while prepping? Circles, yes. Thank you, circles. BUS. Can someone tell me what BUS stands for? Business users and solutions. Okay, that's a good one. Agile framework. Okay, cool. All really good ones. Let's keep going. So this thing right here, some of you may have seen it before. I would say like take a screenshot, Google it, whatever you need to remember it. But this has been my best friend when interviewing for both internships and for full-time roles. It was created by Louis Lin and illustrated by Sacha Chua. And then it has basically the master cheat sheet of everything you need for your product questions for your PM interviews. It has like circles, it has how to create designs, what to think about when talking about trade-offs. This is like a really good resource for all of you. And then shout out to Louis Lin. This stuff helped me get a job out of college. It helped me while at Microsoft, and it helped me again with my Google interviews, so I can't recommend it enough. So moving on, let's talk about the circles framework, which we're going to use for this product case. This is the go-to for many, many PMs that I know. Take a second and read it on the slide. You don't need to memorize it because we'll be walking through it step by step. Okay, so we have circles: comprehending the situation, identifying the customer, reporting needs, cutting and prioritizing, listing solutions, evaluating trade-offs, and summarizing recommendations. Okay, and then let's start getting into it. So here's the question we're going to work off of today. Many of you are very familiar with it. Tell me about your favorite product. So let's take a few seconds, and can people put their favorite products inside the chat, and then we'll pick one to move on to. Spotify, Instagram, Google Photos. Okay, so I see a lot of Spotify, Instagram, and Notion. Let's go with Spotify, just because I've seen a lot of Instagram cases. Fun fact, when I was interviewing last year for Microsoft intern PM roles, the product people picked the most was Instagram, like regularly. At one point in a single day, I had 4 people list Instagram as their favorite product, which was fun because they all picked different things they wanted to fix, but also I think it shows something about our generation. So let's go with Spotify. So let's keep going. So when you're looking at talking about your favorite product, here are some things that you should ask yourself. And think carefully about what product you pick, because this could be make it or break it. If you don't have a product that you can talk a lot about, you'll really struggle during the interview. So pick 2 to 3 products and answer all these questions for them. So I'm going to wait a few seconds and then see if anyone wants to unmute and talk about Instagram and answer these questions. Any volunteers? Anish, I see you picked Instagram in your first Microsoft interview too. Do you want to try giving this a shot?
Yeah, thanks, Summer. Yes, so in my Microsoft interview, I picked Instagram, and just to know, because a photo speaks a million times more than words, so that's why I selected Instagram for them. And it's very unique because all you see is minimalistic photos and not text like Twitter or Facebook. So you happen to have a great visual impression as well as a great user retention as well. I do have a habit of spending at least 1 hour every day on Instagram. So I put myself a check that is, if I cross 30 minutes more, then I get a prompt. So it's very addicting, and that's why it's my favorite product. And the main user base for that product are the millennials. So usually that product is more targeted for them, and the user need, which I think Instagram solves, is boredom and sharing and connecting with friends. That is the primary key aspect of Instagram, which it's intends to solve.
Great answer. Thank you for sharing. And what would you say is 2 to 3 areas that Instagram can improve on?
I feel for my product design question, I felt the way how influencers are able to interact with their customer base. In those terms, I think Instagram can go much better. So suppose you're an influencer and you upload a music video of yourself, and there are like thousands of comments, but you want to be you want to interact with the audience very well. So in this way, how you can make sure to interact and bridge that gap of connecting with them. Out of 1,000, let's say 200 people have commented, hey, that's a cool song. Which song is that? So you need an auto reply to that comment maybe. Or maybe a lot of people would have said awesome, heart smiley face or something like that. And then you have to go and acknowledge them that thank you so much to a lot of people maybe. So how you can automate this process with one single tap, how you can cluster those comment segments and make sure that your influencers are able to interact with the audience better. This is what I personally feel.
Absolutely. I love your answer because you tied it back to the first thing you said, where Instagram helps to connect people, right? And so you identified a gap in there where it could improve and help connect more people, and then you propose a solution.
Thanks.
So let's give you one tip for what to do when they're asking the general, tell me about your favorite product question. And one key to this one is what they're really asking for is your ability to analyze a product quite quickly, right? You don't have to dive in too deep because that can come later. But what you should do is you should list like about 3 different things about the product, 3 different things it does well, 3 different things it could improve on. And then using the rule of 3s actually helps when communicating and make sure you have enough options when moving on to the different parts of the exercise. So moving on. Okay, so we have bounced between Instagram and Spotify. Which one do we want to go with? Let's see, post in the chat and then we'll pick the first one. Spotify. Okay, we are going with Spotify. So here is the circles framework again, if you guys needed a refresher. Whether you decide to use this framework or another, just make sure to time yourself when you're doing it. So I saw a question inside the chat, which was asking for the previous answer that the question, what is your favorite product? How long should your answer be? For that one, I would say there's not really a set time range. It can be anywhere from like 2 minutes. I think if you're hitting into like 10 minutes plus territory, it does chip into your time for the bulk of the solution. But really, like if you are timing yourself and you know that if you're doing a lot of talking up front about this and answering this question, it'll help you later on, then that could be your style to answering the question, right? But just knowing yourself, knowing how long you take on every segment will help you a lot. The only thing you don't want to do is you don't want to spend so much time early on that you don't actually have time to talk about your solutions, the trade-offs, and the recommendations, because that's where you really demonstrate your like critical thinking and your strategic thinking skills. So make sure you time yourself for different types of interviews, like whether it's like a 30-minute interview or a full hour. So let's keep going. So Spotify. So you guys just told me about your favorite products. We decided to pick Spotify, and say I am like the CEO of Spotify, right? And I want to increase adoption. How would I increase adoption? So first, if someone gives you this question, what questions would you ask back to understand the situation? So you could definitely jump to the solution and say free Spotify premium for all, but I don't know if the CEO would be happy for that. Anisha was a really good one, asking which platform that we want to increase adoption for, mobile or desktop, what we're optimizing for, primary use through demographics, what are we measuring by adoption. All of these are really, really great. And so with this first question, where you comprehend the situation, asking all these questions are great. And I actually think this is one of the most important parts of the interview, because this is the chance for you to like set up your rapport with the interviewer and set up the like the tone for the rest of your question, right? And so what you want to do is you want to collaborate with your interviewer. You might want to make it a discussion. You ask them a question, they might ask you it back, and you should propose a solution and ask them like what their thoughts are. And what this will show is you're able to like collaborate with different people. It'll show them how you're collaborating with your peers and like what kinds of questions you're asking during like your projects or during your classes. So this part of the framework is really, really great for showing what you'll be like when working on a team. Okay, so let's imagine that we have asked all these questions. We're aligned with the interviewer. The interviewer wants us to increase the number of users who are on the mobile app. Okay, so let's keep going. And then this part is identifying the customer. Again, think of the rule of threes. Think about the three different personas that you want to talk about. Like, what are their goals and motivations? What prevents them from reaching their goals? And then just talk through these with your interviewer. And then once you've done more and more of these questions, you'll find it's easier to identify these personas, and then you'll be able to cut down the amount of time you spend on the segment. But the key for the first couple ones you do it is like really thinking through what are the 3 top ones you want to do and the ones that you feel like you can speak to later on. So who wants to share a persona that we think we should work off of? Thoughts? No thoughts? Okay. Elders, workout music listeners, middle-aged users who are not good at tech, podcast listeners. Okay. Let's focus on increasing the amount of mobile users who are students. And then we can keep going. I like a lot of these ideas though, like podcast listeners is a big one, Gen X, runners, all really good ones. So let's just focus on mobile app users who are students. Again, let me just emphasize that out of all the different parts of this framework, this section, in my opinion, is the easiest one to cut down, right? Because if you do have a chance to pick your favorite product, or you have an idea of different products that are similar, you can just reuse these personas, right? And so you should already have an idea of like what your couple bullet points are. So if you're running low on time, this is like a good one to like go through very quickly. Of course, like still showing that you like have an understanding of the market. Cool. So let's get to reporting customer needs, the R part of it. So for your personas, start with just the first one, the one you think is the most important, and try to list out the different customer needs. List like about 3, again, the rule of thirds, and you can use this, this basic like formula. As a blank user, I want this so that I can do this. And then if you do a great job with the primary persona and you've listed out 3, check with your interviewer and ask them if they want you to continue on with the other personas. Sometimes they'll say, yes, I want you to continue on. Sometimes they'll feel like your first persona was already enough, and then you can skip through like doing it for the rest of the personas. And so for students who are listening to Spotify on their mobile apps, who has a good customer needs statement? Thoughts? Okay, so let's go back to what someone said in the chat earlier. So let's say, as a student on the mobile app, I want free Spotify so that I can listen to music whenever I want without paying. And then we can, okay, Nandita, I like that one. Do you want to unmute and then give us your user?
Yeah, happy to.
User need?
Hey, Nandita. So I guess for me, I went with, as a dancer, I want to listen to specific tracks so I can plan my dance lesson accordingly. And so thinking about the top 3 needs, right? If I am trying to quickly and effectively plan a lesson, I don't have time to, let me double check if this track has the right beats per minute and, if it's going to work well. I just want to be able to jump to a playlist and quickly get suggested songs. So I can cut down on that time. So that's one of my top needs. But then again, the song has to be well reviewed, well rated, something I'll enjoy. So it needs to be tied back to similar tracks I listen to. So it's not something too wacky. And then I guess my third need, which would be equally important, is making sure that it's, it's not too long, not too short. So the optimum length. So it plans, so my lesson plan can fit within my lesson plan.
I love it. I love that you were able to speak to it so eloquently. It seems like you really understand the pain points for this. And then that was really great. So thank you. And then Sylvia, you also had one. Do you want to unmute and then talk through yours?
Yeah, sure. So like as a student, I just want to follow my favorite artists so that I could just, know the latest information, especially the concert information. And also I think that's a kind of way to show my support.
Great. Okay, and then I see Kirk and Shreya, you both added some. As a student, I want to interact with my friends so they can choose songs I listen to in real time. And as a student, I want to save parts of a talk and reach out, my favorite parts of the talk, and reach out whenever I want to access it. Cool. So these are all really great ones. Keep adding it to the chat if you have any other good ones. And then we can move on to the next part. So this is the part where it's probably like where PMs provide the most value in real life, is prioritization. So here in this section, you would talk about like your personas, what needs they have, and which ones you want to focus on. You really want to show that you're able to cut down and hone in on the basic need, and you want to be able to justify your thought process, right? And so what's going to happen is if you're able to prioritize things really well and give justification, it shows your strategic thinking skills, right? And then also on top of that, if you're able to link your primary use case back to the original outcome that you defined, the metrics-based outcome that you wanted to do, that's like even more bonus points, right? So looking at these different needs statements from the last slide, let's pick one. So I really like Sylvia's. As a student, I want to follow my favorite artists so that I can show support and learn the concert info. We also see I want to interact with my friends so they can choose songs I listen to in real time. And then I want to save my favorite parts of the talk. So the reason why I want to follow my favorite artists so that I can show them support and learn the concert info is because for me, this not only affects the student's persona, but it also affects things like the music producers, right? It gets them more involved, it gets them more active. And not only this, like it gets people who maybe are using like different like apps to listen to music, right? But they really love an artist. And so they might be willing to convert if they know that like the artist is promoting stuff or is like giving like pre-access or things like that if you go through Spotify, right? So I think this one is good because it ties together like different personas. It has the ability to increase the user base in not only students, but it also can convince like different like producers to come in. It also has an element of like, hey, it could also increase revenue, which is really great. Because like as you like get people going on looking at concert info from Spotify's mobile app, you can then link out and you can to the different like concert booking, concert ticket booking sites. So I like that one a lot. When you're going through this, I think what will help the most is practice. And then also looking at things like the different market sizes that you can potentially impact. So for me, I looked at like students being a big base, but this also affecting different personas. I looked at the impact, how it affects the ecosystem, and then like its potential to increase the revenue or its ROI impact. But no matter which part you feel like you want to focus on, which news or need you want to focus on, just make sure you can justify it and talk about it. So moving on. So I picked that one statement to prioritize. And then going off of that, who can list some solutions that they think would be like great for helping students follow their artists, show support, and learn concert info? Thoughts? Feel free to post in the chat. Yep, showing support, links out to SM, yep. Let's see what else. Concert notifications based off location, I love that. So let's get one more. Having an artist feed, yep. Yep, Sylvia, like during the pandemic, maybe they can consider moving concerts online. Those are all really good ones. But the key to this part of the question is just like being creative, like getting all these different ideas, but making sure you have at least like 3 solid ones. So you have options. So in this section, what happens is like you have a lot of ideas. Sometimes you might have more than 3. But at the end of the day, you want to, again, cut down the solutions you suggest and then just have like 3 that you recommend and then talk through these 3 and which ones you want to pick. So again, it's like another layer of prioritization. Yep, students could subscribe to an artist if they have premium and get VIP access to concert tickets. Yep, they could automatically create and add songs to favorite playlists. Yep. First 10 bookings would have a discount. That's really interesting, right? Because I could see like students waiting for a single artist concert and then like queuing up and then trying to get that. Yep, waitlist for VIP access. Yeah, these are all really, really great solutions. Does someone want to unmute and make the case for theirs? Okay, so how about let's say, Ivan, do you want to unmute and then share your solution?
Everything. So basically, it's what you want to do is if you want to drive kind of results, how can you want to figure out how you want to engage in students, and a lot of students want to attend these concerts, but because of whatever situation we're in, it's like how do we make sure that they're able to get that same experience while reducing the chances of their safety being affected. And the more concerts that they attend, I think first of all it will increase, I guess, accessibility to everyone throughout the entire world, but it will also give incentives for individuals to go to go to these events, because the more they go to, the more benefits that it will add to their, not only for Spotify and their account, but also for the artists themselves. Let me know if you need me to explain anything further.
Yeah, that was great. I think one thing that's key to your explanation is this is a feature that will not only help get new people in, but will also
Yeah.
make it sticky, right? So
Yeah,
like people who are, yeah.
It will also, I think we'll get out of the comfort zones of people who maybe will come from low income families, because maybe we'll incentivize them to get to subscribe to and then they will do, if they know that about this kind of feature, maybe it will add more, maybe they will find a job in order for them to get access to this feature, so that they can participate more without having to worry about any kind of financial stress. Who knows?
Yeah. Love it. Okay, so there's a lot of good ones in the chat, but for the sake of time, let's move on to the next part, which is evaluating the trade-offs. We don't have to go through this entire exercise, but yeah, great job, Ivan. But here are a couple of things that I think about when I'm talking about the trade-offs between like my 3 different solutions that I've picked. I usually pick only one. I either use Porter's 5 forces or I use the 5 C's, because it can sometimes be too much if you go through discussing all of it. So you guys can feel free to go look at these. There's a lot of good resources for learning about them. But basically, if you hit all of these things, like say for the 5 C's, company, collaborators, customers, competitors, and climate, or even if you hit like 3 or 4 of it, it shows that you're thinking in a very strategic way, right? For the company part, you're thinking like, why this company? Why should like Microsoft do it? Why should Google do it? Why should Spotify do it? It's really great. Collaborators shows you think about the ecosystem as like a whole, and it shows you can work across like many different areas, many different products, all of that. Customers, it talks about like, hey, like, why are you guys doing it? Like your customer base. And then competitors also shows like a knowledge of the market. So you guys can practice with either of these. You can think of like your own different frameworks. And then we can move on to the next part. And so arguably the most important part of your question is summarizing your recommendation. So you've done all the hard work. You've come up with all these great ideas, and this is where you want your communication skills to shine. What you want to do is you want to up-level all of your like findings and the things that you've brainstormed and summarize your recommendations. So here is just like a sample script that I wrote this morning for the purpose of this workshop, but it shows that like even when you're summarizing recommendations, you can use frameworks like STAR. So like here is one where we would start by like talking about the situation where we found an issue in this product and we want to improve it for this group of users. We had a task where we wanted to focus on this for users so that they can do this task. And then this is our solution, and then this is our result. So either based on this framework or based on your own framework, who can summarize like a problem that we solved today, and then how we solved it, and then our recommendation? Okay, so Phyllis, I see you say have sale. Do you want to unmute and then talk about what sale is?
Yes, I was not expecting to unmute, but thank you for inviting me to the party. So SAIL is my reinterpretation of the STAR method, because I think that the STAR method over indexes on the situation and task part and leaves out things which I've included as the I and L in SAIL. So SAIL is for situation, action, impact, and learning. So, you briefly discuss the situation because that's not the important part. The important part is like how you think about the situation and the action you take as a result. And then from there, like really understanding the effects and impact outcomes, impact metrics about the decision that you made. And from there, being able to make future choices and also like think retrospectively and reflect on what the effect of those choices were, aka the learnings.
Yeah, that was great. I think this is a great example of how you can like tweak different things or think of your own ways to present your recommendations. Honestly, if I heard you talk about it in that way, if you're bringing in the impact, the learnings, I would be super impressed in any interview. So that was really great. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone else have other tips or ways that they would summarize things? Really, really great. Cool. So let's move on. So we kind of did like different bits and pieces of what a product question would look like. We went through like a couple of tips for how to make you successful, but really the best way to like guarantee that you'll be ready and prepared is like just to keep practicing. So I mean this in like the best possible way, like keep practicing. As you practice more and more, you'll start to get a hang of things. You'll start like knowing how to talk about like market trends and like how to talk about trade-offs. And then once you start to get used to it, they actually start to get fun because you think about things in a different way. So actually like when I'm bored, sometimes I'll just like flip through like my PM prep books and just like do one or two. So make sure you get used to them, make sure you get comfortable with them. Once you have like a solid way of communicating them, you'll like be totally fine for your interviews. Okay, cool. So let's move on to the wrap up. Okay, so this part will be quick. I'm gonna just share an exercise that I do when I'm prepping for interviews, and then also my go-to resources when I'm going through interviewing. So next slide. So basically, this is what I start doing when I want to get in the mindset of thinking about like product questions. What I do is about a month before my interviews, I start to create like a doc, or I have like an ongoing doc where every day, every time, like even like the smallest things like irritate me, or like if I notice something that can be improved, I just write it down. I don't think about anything else. I just note it. And then at the end of each week, for every item I've noted, I brainstorm like 2 to 3 solutions for each problem. I either like write it or I just think about it. And then I pick like one that I really like. And then I think about, why do I like it? Why do I think it's better than these other ones that I brainstormed this week? And then I start to flesh out a product case around it. And so then like by doing this, like you start to get like a longer and longer list, and you also start to think about like a vast array of like products, right? And why they matter, and why like they impact users, why they impact you in your daily life. And then when you start to like rate and prioritize these different like issues, pain points, and also those solutions, you start to have like a mental model of like what you think about when you're like trying to prioritize this. And so this is really, really helpful if you have like a lot of time, or you want to just like positively like build your product sense. And then at the end of like a month or 2 months, like it's really cool because you see all the different ideas you've come with. So let's keep going. So here are the different resources I use when I'm interviewing. I use these back in school. I use them now when I'm interviewing. These are like the PM's best friend when they're going through or looking at a new job. So there's Cracking the PM Interview, there's Decode and Conquer. And those are my 2 like foundational prep books when I need refreshers. And then from there, I start to pick and choose things from Lewis Lynn's Product Manager Interview book for like extra questions and extra practice. And then Swipe to Unlock is also a bonus book where when I'm trying to think about like strategic questions or how I'd ask them, I'll like refresh myself or look at it or say like, I think they do a really good job of calling out like different strategic decisions by different companies. So if I know I'm interviewing for like say Spotify or Apple, I'll go and look up their chapters on Spotify and Apple. And so like if I do get asked questions about them in the interview, I can speak to something. So those are all really good resources. And then once you start doing this more and more, you'll know exactly what like which sections to flip to prep. And then also really quick, these 2 sites. There's a 2-week PM prep plan site, and then there's also prepping for PM interviews in 15 to 20 hours. Both really great once you get the hang of things because they time box things, right? And so it gives you that sense of urgency, and it also makes sure you prioritize the most important things to prep for. Okay, cool. And so wrapping up, we can go to the Q&A. Let's see, how should we do this?
I think we'll just go with the top voted question.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we'll go with the first one. How do you tackle product design question about a product that you have very little idea about?
Good question. So I think, and this is my thoughts, the interviewer is doing a bad job if they're trying to throw you a curveball like that. The point of these interviews are to gauge your thinking, and it really doesn't help if like you don't have a great understanding of what the product is. So what I would say is like just respectfully tell your interviewer like, hey, I don't know a lot about this product. Can we like change to another one that I have a better understanding about? And I would say like 99% of the time, like they will be totally fine with that. If they aren't, just make sure to ask a lot of clarifying questions, and just like state your assumptions. So like if there's a product I don't know about, I'll just say like, hey, I know this is in the entertainment space. I assume that it's targeted at this range or this demographic, right? But I think your best chance for this one is just asking them if you can switch to another product. Okay, is it okay to choose a lesser known product the interviewer might not know about when asked to pick my favorite product, or is a common product safer? It is totally fine to pick a lesser known product as long as you give a like 1 or 2 line intro to what the product is, what it does, and what the user need is. So in this case, that first answer to tell me what your favorite product is really important, right? Okay, and then, hi Summer, I recently got a full-time PM role at Microsoft and I was curious to know what made you switch from Microsoft to Google. Great question. For me personally, it was about learning and growth. I learned a ton at Microsoft and I would highly recommend it for people who are like coming out of college because there's a lot of like really smart, really seasoned PMs there. But I had hit my 3-year mark and at that point I felt like I wanted to see a different perspective, right? I wanted to learn about different products and how different companies operated. And so that's what made me decide to like start looking around. Also, congrats on your offer. Let me know how it goes and if you need any advice when you're starting. Okay, and then what side projects should someone do to develop PM skills? Great question. Yeah, so side projects that go back. Well, okay, so first you should be picking side projects that you're passionate about, right? If you're not passionate about it, it's very hard to talk about it. And then when you're in these side projects, make sure you're carving out a role which you feel like are going to improve any of those like key PM skills that we talked about earlier, right? So if you want to focus on like building up, say like your strategic thinking, like pick a side project where you can do like market analysis or something, or you can like look at competitors. If you want to like build up your customer obsession, like pick a side project where you can build out a role where you're doing a lot of user research or talking to people. It just really depends on what skill you want to build, right? Okay, cool. Okay, so the next question is, I am interested in specific Google products. How do I tackle product questions about a Google product that I have less idea about if I asked in a Google APM interview? Yeah, there's no expectation that you know all the Google products. I would say, going back to the first question, just tell your interviewer that you aren't very familiar with that product and then ask them if you can switch. Okay, so how are you able to recover from product design changes that you've made that did not achieve the deliverables that you've expected? Ivan, is this for interviews or in work?
In general.
Okay. Yeah, so this definitely does happen, right? Where the outcomes are not as you expected. I think the key is being able to grow and learn from it. So like you do things in like industry where you like do a lot of retrospectives, you talk about it. There's definitely a trend where it's more acceptable to talk about failures as long as you're growing from it. And so I think just accepting that it's part of the process and trying to improve the next round will take you really far.
Okay.
There is one really great question here in the chat. Anne is asking, how can we talk in such a succinct way as you do? I love how you don't have any redundancy in your comments. Summer,
wow.
that can be your last question.
I am very flattered as someone who personally like sometimes looks back and is in shock at how far I've come. That is so flattering. Thank you for that. It's honestly just practice. I think about this and I try to improve on it every day. But really just like being practicing and like putting yourself out there will help you grow the skill. But yes, really great questions from everyone. I'm so excited to see that you guys are all interviewing for PM. I think that all of you have like a lot of great potential, a lot of great ideas. And it's super impressive. Like when I look back at like 3-4 years ago when I was interviewing, I see like how like much the candidate, like the quality of the candidates has grown, and it's so impressive.
Yeah, so with that, thank you so much, Summer, for joining us today, and everyone in the call who are still with us. If you like the workshop, if you enjoyed it, and if you learned a lot, show some love to Summer in the chat or just by that clapping emoji here in Zoom as well. And also recognize her and share your insights today to your LinkedIn community. Tag Summer, tag us, and we'll be supporting you in there. And also a few announcements. So we have a we have a Project Jam Protothon that we used to run in the summer, but we're bringing it back this fall as well. That is a really great way for you to gain hands-on experience in building side projects, which can set you apart in the interview. So we have the registration link in the chat, so check that out. We also have our next event, which is going to be an imposter syndrome roundtable. Watch out for the registration link. We will be launching it very soon as well. And if you're not yet in the Product Bud Slack community, please join us. We also have our link, the link in the chat, and we hope to continue seeing you all there. So thank you, everyone.
Bye, thanks all.
And we'll stop recording.